Welcome back to GBGuns, the Walther PDPs. We've shown you the 4-inch compact. We've shown you the 4.5-inch full size. In fact, you can even swap these. And in doing that, I made note of a design feature that has me really curious about the subject of our video, the 5-inch, to see if Walther pulled the same trick I think they did to make this 4.5-inch compact, which I think is a pretty stellar setup. Those of you that are gun nuts may have noticed we don't have a terrible gap there, but there is a little bit hanging over. Anyways, got something I want to show you, taking a look at the Walther 5-inch compact PDP, coming up next on GBGuns. Alright, here is the case, looking like something that might even be a Jeep accessory with some real rugged designs. Same case that you saw on the compact and the 4.5-inch full size. You open it up, there's our 5-incher. It did have the chamber flag in it. I've of course already had it all to play with it. You get tools for adjusting the sights, which explains why the sights look kind of funky. I'm not sure what that empty baggie was for. These back straps, which are rubbery, giving a little bit of softness to them, also makes them pretty comfortable when it comes to the recoil absorption. If you're curious about how these different backstraps change the grip and feel of the gun, you'll have to watch our 4-inch compact shooting impressions video. Since this is the same frame size, we're not going to bother with that on this gun. Spare magazine with a mag loader, and up top is our instruction manual. Walther's not doing the test targets anymore. Kind of unfortunate. Got some extra goodies in here, including the QR code to get your optic plate. And the manual is the same as it was with the other ones. Very nice manual, very clear, vivid pictures in full color, describing things as they should be, including, as I have to point out once more, the very German way of saying adjusting the pistol to its user. Because if you have a fitment issue, it's not the gun, it's you. This is a Walther. Anyways, get the case out of the way. We're going to do a brief look around the gun, as we always do, as far as the advanced features and part of what makes these things so different. You're going to have to watch the other tabletops for that, because I've already covered them and don't want to cover them again for our loyal subscribers who have already seen that stuff. Let's get the case out of the way. If you hadn't heard yet, the PDP is replacing the PPQ line. Some of the specialty models of PPQs are going to stay, but generally instead of a PPQ, the PDP is now the way to go. In our other videos on the PDPs, we talk about some of the changes and things, but I thought it'd be interesting to show a 5-inch PPQ. This is one of the special editions with the M1 paddle magazine release, which I love. Also had some lightning cuts up top, but the thing that people complained about with the PPQs was not optics ready. Also note how they kind of just stretched out the front of the gun to take it to 5 inches, and it looks lengthened. It looks to me like a much longer gun than the PDP. PDP, everything is just scaled up to 5 inches. You also don't have hang off, you've got a full length dust cover sticking off the end. Here's the Q5 match. This is another 5-inch PPQ. These came optics ready, like the PDPs are, but also heavily stylized. And you've got a standard length dust cover here with a bit of muzzle sticking out the end versus the new PDP where everything is just elongated to meet 5 inches. That's because these are meant as a duty pistol, going after the law enforcement and duty side of things first, whereas the old 5-inch Walthers were a competition, showy gun, have fun gun kind of thing. Although I always prefer a longer barrel when possible. Longer barrel means longer sight radius when you're not using red dot, and undoubtedly much more muzzle velocity, meaning more energy on target. Also means your hollow points have a higher chance of expanding. Might shallow penetration a little bit, but in the trade-off of broader opening. So slide to frame fit. Well, first let's show clear. And YouTube censorship. I don't film this with my eyeballs. I'm filming with a camera in front of me pointed 90 degrees down. I've got a screen pointed 90 degrees back at me that I'm looking through, so I'm not pointing this at myself or anyone else when we look at the front of the gun. We're in the front. There's a lot of slide to frame play here. It's a lot looser than I would expect from Walther. In fact, pull the magazine out so you know that's not it. You can even make that rattle a little bit, which normally I say, ooh, that has potential to cause some accuracy issues. However, this is a Walther, so I'm trusting that something else inside of the gun is going to prevent that from being an issue. We'll find out about that when we get to the range. We still have this slight bowl cut up here to make holstering a little bit simpler, and these awesome serrations that are actually broader than the rest of the slide. That's why they call it super terrain. Full length dust cover, which is why we're getting some of that play, and I'll explain more in a bit. And lots of rail space. You can fit all kinds of accessories there. Front of the trigger guard is textured for those that like to do that European style grip. We have a slight relief up in here to allow your hand to get up a little bit higher, and it is broadened much like on the steel frame models were, so that got a nice comfortable rest there and a rounded edge that doesn't cause Glock knuckle. Nice and smooth. Checkering on the front strap. You can see we've got some slight raises, some slight terrain on both sides there to aid in filling the palm without it being a finger groove per se. It does also get a little bit narrower through here to allow the thumb to rest in the middle there and allow your trigger finger to have plenty of reach. For me, with my large hands, I'm reaching the front of the trigger guard. If I throw my finger in here, I'm pretty good positioning. Just pull it out a little bit to get that middle pad and take advantage of the awesome trigger. Speaking of the trigger, those of you who don't know the PDPs, it's like the PPQ trigger, which was excellent, but better. They've lessened, sorry for double checking there, lessened the take up, so it's very quick and light to a wall that is very definitive with a good break. Our reset is that Walther standard. It actually kicks you a little bit past it. And clean break again. Outstanding factory trigger. Look at the texturing there. It's actually a pyramid on top of a hexagon. Got some photos of that on our Instagram, and I think some close-ups in our others. Looking at slide to frame fit in the back, we've got wobble in all directions. Not standard Walther. Kind of surprising. There's our long sight radius, 3 dots with the dots in the middle. You just kind of put them all together. I kind of like that dot in the middle thing. And while this sight picture might appear strange at first, the reason why those sights look a little weird is because they're adjustable. You see the screws there? That's for being able to adjust that. And this bracketry on the outside remains stationary, and the sights move within the bracketry, which does have a nice ledge for that tactical reload off of a belt or something. My army friends can say a rock or something. We've got our ambidextrous slide lock and release. It locks, it releases, it actually works. And our magazine release is, of course, reversible. Next, we're going to take a look inside the gun, and I'll show you that trick, which is why I'm glad I have the 4" and 4.5" here. To field strip the Walther PDP, it's just like what you've come to know from PPQs and others. We're making sure the weapon is clear. Fire the trigger. Our takedown levers are right here, nice and broad. I'm going to pull down on both sides. I'm going to slide back just a hair, and then bring it forward and off. That right there is what I wanted to show you. That is an insert. There's our 4", our 4.5", and now our 5". I'll zoom in to show you guys. If I line them up this way, that the recoil assembly on the 4.5 and on the 5 are the same length, as is recoil assembly from the 5 to the 4. It's an interesting trick that I think is part of how Walther's able to offer these at such a competitive price. Are they going cheap? Maybe. But I think the real perk is your aftermarket guide rods and things that were made for a 4-inch are going to fit your 4.5 and your 5. And the way they fill in that space is with this polymer extension. It's kind of pressed in there. Pull our barrel out the same. That appears to be seated inside of rails, if I can get light in there to show you. Does not want to come out loosely or freely. I'm not going to mess with it because I haven't tested the gun yet. And any fidgeting that I do with this thing prior to our actual first range shooting might alter the performance of the gun, thereby causing us issues. So, in the name of keeping things fair, not going to do it that way. I'm going to reassemble this 4 and 4.5 so I don't get parts mixed up. There's plenty of parts interchange between them, of course, but in the name of keeping our tests as fair as possible, we don't shoot doctored guns, we also don't shoot altered guns, unless the alteration is what we're testing. Hopefully the camera will pick up on how beautifully smooth, clean the inside of that slide is, as one would expect, not only from German manufacturing, but from a brand new set of tooling. And here's a frame. Lots of space up front, but you can see that our rail spots are in the same place. Knew I was going to have to do this. Here is the 4-inch compact frame. And see, they're called compact because it's the 15 rounder, even though we have more dust cover on our 5-incher. But you can see the internals, and more importantly those rail spots, are in the same place. That helps streamline and ease manufacturing, which for us consumers means more parts interchangeability and lower pricing. So I'm not going to complain about that. I know plenty of people have complained about the prices of German-made guns. Walther's doing something here that helps keep things competitive. Nice 5-inch barrel. We'll check with a polished feed ramp there. Check for chamber support using, as always, our Nosler match. We use the Nosler because in my testing it is the most consistent ammunition out there. That's after chronoing about 70 total loads and finding the least variances in a Nosler. Variance of course comes from powder or projectile, but also from brass design. So I trust this to be good brass. Get our camera to focus. What we're looking for with chamber support is the brass being supported all the way underneath that edge there. Why is that important? Well, if you should ever have an overly hot load or a failure of the casing, be it reloaded brass or aluminum or something of that sort, it's easier to break through that. If it's easier to break through the brass than to push the bullet, it breaks through the brass or the casing and pushes all those forces out down the feed ramp into the gun if the brass isn't fully supported. But with that support all the way around, as this barrel has, your forces are going to be pushing on that barrel out the front. Show you our locked position with the barrel in. It's a nice, easy feed from the magazine right in there. That's going to aid in reliability as we've come to expect from our Walthers. Reassembly of the PDP is just a reverse of what we've already done. Grab your slide, slip the barrel back in and let it lock in place. And then we take our guide rod and drop it in. It's not a whole lot of pressure to compress on that guide rod. What I find curious is generally a longer slide means a heavier slide, more mass, which means you can get away with less spring rate in there to make the gun easier to rack. It's not particularly difficult to rack, but it is the same spring that's in the 4-inch. So I wonder, when we do our What's for Dinner test, how this thing's going to do with some of those softer loads. The spring rate is the same, of course, but the slide mass is more. It's heavier. So that'll be interesting. Now, we'll have to be careful in our What's for Dinner selection because, of course, a 5-inch gun is generally not used as a carry gun. It's more of a competition gun or an outside the waistband duty type gun. Not a lot of appendix guys like sticking that much in their pants, but I prefer the 5-inchers for shooting. They generally feel softer to me. How this one's going to feel with that 4-inch spring in there is curious. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe it's not as important as I thought it was, or maybe the people that think they're tuning their guns are over tuning, or maybe Walther made a mistake. I doubt the latter, but I will test it with the same quality that I test everything. See that second hole there? That's that big cavern, unlike your 4-inch where you see the end of your guide rod because it's got that spacer in there. Interesting way of doing things. So you might be asking what they do before. Well, there's that big hole. They did the same thing on these older models. Short spring, getting away with the spacer up front. So, since this gun never had any issues for me, I don't think the new one will either. But it's a curious simplification of manufacturing. Also makes it a whole lot easier to have spare parts and for the aftermarket to support it. When we get this thing out to the range, you will see myself and Miss Tia's impressions on it. We'll do accuracy testing, our trademark What's for Dinner test, some initial impressions on the range, and then also our spinning target, which is turning out to be a rather fun way to test controllability of the gun to shoot with some type of external stress that we don't have control over. That makes it a little bit tougher than running with one of those beep toys. So that's the tabletop of the Walther PDP 5-inch compact. Does this fit on the full-size frame? Bonus. Let's find out. It fits. A little bit of overhang, but once again, we're kind of covered by that spacer being there. Could dust and things get in there? Yeah, probably. But does it still cycle? Well, all the mechanical features seem to be working fine. Anyways, enough of that. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you guys out on the range for our shooting impressions of this guy.